Hi guys, happy Monday. We are continuing with what we started last week. So last week we started looking at ratios and rates and unit rate. And before your little scavenger hunt Friday, you started to solve proportions on Thursday. So we're going to continue not only solving, but also having to write our own proportions by looking at a word problem. So when you're reading through the word problem, first thing you want to determine is what are you comparing? What are the two things that we're talking about in that problem? Once you know that, then you can set yourself up a word fraction, like I had talked to you about last week with the ratios. And based off the word fractions, fill in what you know and solve for what's missing. So you're going to plug in the values that you have. Whatever you don't know, you'll use a variable for, and then that's what we'll have as a proportion to solve. So let's look at this first example. It says that the ratio of students to adults on a field trip is 9-2. There are 6 adults on the trip. How many students are there? So the first thing we're trying to see is what are the two things that we're talking about? And in this specific problem, we're talking about students to adults on the field trip. So that's what we're comparing. We're comparing students. I'm going to set that up on my top part, and adults. So here's my word fraction. That's going to help me decide what I'm putting on top and what I'm putting on the bottom. So the initial ratio I'm given is that the students to adults on the trip is 9-2. So I'm going to set that up first. I know that I have 9 students to every 2 adults. The second part is saying that there are 6 adults on the trip, and I'm looking for how many students there are. So I have to determine where to put that 6. Because 6 is the number of adults on the trip, that's going to go down on the denominator where I'm putting my adults, and students is what I'm looking for. Okay, now that I have my proportion, I'm just going to use my cross products to solve like you had done last week. So I'm going to do 2 times x and set that equal to 9 times 6. That's going to give me 2x equals 54. Now we're going to go through what we know from here in just terms of solving one-step equations. I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and that's going to leave me with x equals 27 students. So if there were 6 adults on the trip, that would mean that there were 27 students. Okay, let's look at the next one. It says that a chef increases the amount of ingredients in a recipe to make a proportional recipe. The new recipe has 6 cups of black beans. Write a proportion that gives the number of X tomatoes in the new recipe. So we're talking about 2 things here from the recipe. I'm talking about tomatoes and black beans. It doesn't super specify what I put where in terms of giving an initial ratio, so you can really determine how you want to set that up. But I'm going to start with my tomatoes on top, and then I'm going to put black beans on the bottom. And there's, again, multiple ways that you can do this correctly. So you just have to make sure whatever you're putting on top and bottom is how you set it up in your problem in order to stay consistent. Okay, so if I'm looking at my initial recipe, the ratio of tomatoes is that there is 1 tomato for every 1.5 cups of black beans, and I'm getting that from right here in the recipe that's given to me initially. The new recipe has 6 cups of black beans, and I'm looking for the number of X tomatoes. So again, my 6 is going to go down here because that's where I'm putting my black beans in the denominator. My tomatoes is going to go up top, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, using cross products to solve, I'm going to have 1.5x is equal to 6. 6 times 1 is 6. Now I can just use division to solve. I'm going to divide both sides by 1.5, and that's going to leave me with that x equals 4 tomatoes. So if I increase the number of black beans, if I increase the number of black beans to 6 cups as opposed to 1.5 cups, I'd have to increase my tomatoes from 1 to 4 to maintain that same ratio. Sorry for my typo there. There we go. So you would have 4 tomatoes. Okay, here's another food one. It says that a recipe for a casserole calls for 2 cups of rice. The recipe makes 6 servings of casserole. How many cups of rice are needed to make 10 servings? So again, starting with what is it that we're looking for here? And that is to compare the cups of rice that are needed in however many servings it is that we're talking about. So setting up my word fraction, I'm going to do cups of rice on top and servings in my denominator. I'd like you to pause the video now and see if you can set up your own proportion, and then we'll go through how to solve it. So if you took a break and set up your proportion, you should have found that in the initial recipe, there were 2 cups of rice to make 6 servings. They then want to know how many cups of rice, that would be my unknown, are needed if I want to make 10 servings. So hopefully this is the proportion that you ended up with if you tried it on your own. Now we can go through and solve. Cross products give me 6 times x equals 6x. 2 times 10 is going to give me 20. Now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So that gives me, if you use a calculator, you're going to get 3.3 repeating. So really x would be equal to 3 1/3 cups. Remember, we're talking about cups of rice. So if I increase my recipe to where I need 10 servings, I need 3 1/3 cups of rice. Okay, let's just look at one more example. And again, I'd like you to try this one on your own. Write and solve a proportion. A stadium holds approximately 45,000 people during a baseball game. If the ratio of season ticket holders to all tickets is 1:3, approximately how many season ticket holders are there? So again, let's start by thinking about what are the 2 things we're talking about? What are we comparing in this problem? And that is the ratio of season ticket holders compared to all the tickets. So if we have our whole stadium filled, we have season ticket holders that we're looking at, and then we have all people. Pause the video and set up your proportion. And once you have it set up, even go through and solve. Okay, so initially the season ticket holders compared to all the people in the stadium is 1:3. It says that a stadium holds approximately 45,000 people during the baseball game. That's going to represent everybody, the 45,000. So that's going to go in my denominator. And I want to know how many of those people are going to be season ticket holders. And that's what my question is. How many are season ticket holders? So that's my variable x. You again could have used cross products for this. You also could have saw the relationship of how to go from 3 to 45,000. So whatever really works best for you. Either way, you would end up getting 3x equaling 45,000. If you divide it by 3, you would find that 15,000 people are season ticket holders. Okay. Now that you've completed this video, hopefully you took some notes and did some practice problems on your own. You are going to log on to Big Ideas and complete your assignment for today. Remember, when you're reading the problem, to pull out the 2 things that you're talking about, figure out what's going on top, what's going on the bottom in order to set up your proportion correctly, and then use your method to solve. Have a great day.